You're listening to Lore Friendly, episode 90.
Woo!
With me and Alice Bell. How are you doing, Alice?
I'm alright. I've recovered from watching the next episode.
Yes, it was pretty crazy. The mother of all meltdowns, I believe, just happened. Figuratively and literally.
It's just what I'm like when I'm on my period. I mean, I'm not supposed to further this narrative that women go crazy when they're on their period, but...
Maybe that explains it. Maybe they should have had that as part of the seeding portion of Daenerys' descent into madness.
Well, it would have been more seeding than they've actually done, so, you know.
So, episode 5 is called The Bells, I believe.
It's me!
Yes, the Alice Bells
It's
is what
me!
it should have been called.
That's what we're going to call this episode, right?
That's what they were basically doing. They were ringing the Alice Bells.
They were calling me out.
Yes. They're like, you're going to love this part, Alice.
This is going to be your favorite episode. Ring ring, motherfucker.
So let's start with Varys, because we're going to go through the characters again this time instead of the actual plot.
That's the easiest way to go through these battle episodes, is that you can't focus on the timeline because the timeline's all disjointed.
So we begin with Varys speaking to one of his little birds, and I believe he was trying to poison Daenerys because the small child was basically saying that she doesn't eat, and Varys was, trying to talk her up, give her a pep talk.
Come on, you can poison her. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
I feel like you're giving the writers too much credit, personally.
But it does make sense that would be an easy way to get rid of Daenerys and put Jon on the throne,
yeah,
right?
would be to poison her and get rid of the other claimant to the throne.
But you don't think that was the intent there with that scene?
After this episode, I don't think that they're writing with intent anymore. I don't think there's any subtlety left in their bones.
True. Speaking of writing, I did like Varys' penmanship. It was very, very nice. I was like, wow, I wish I could write
Yeah, it was
like
very
that.
neat, very readable, very legible, which is quite nice.
Because you think that there's probably some lords who put on airs when they write, like use fancy calligraphy, and then no one can read what they're saying. But, Varys... he's trying to, make sure that information is dispersed.
That'd be me if I was a lord. You wouldn't be able to read shit.
Oh, I wouldn't. That seems to be a bad way of dispensing information, though. I mean, the easiest way, I think, would just be to tell random people. Just shout it out to the heavens. Like, hey, Jon is a fucking Targaryen. I mean, it's such a juicy secret that you just tell a couple people and it will snowball, right?
But at the same time, if you're writing as being the actual spy master, that carries more weight than some random crazy person going around going like, hey,
True.
Daenerys is not the real claimant to the throne.
True. But once those fucking words got to Hot Pie, I'm sure people would start believing him because Hot Pie, he is definitely someone with authority.
We miss you all, Hot Pie.
Yes, I do miss him. But yeah, how do you think that particular information is going to get out? Did he use ravens, little birds, or?
I don't know, because there's no evidence of ravens and a maester on Dragonstone. I feel like he was just writing them and then waiting until he could get to King's Landing and he's be like, yeah, there's ravens here, it's fine, it'll be okay.
It'll work. If not a raven, I'll just use a random seagull or something.
Random kitchen girls.
Yeah. There's other birds. There's pigeons.
Yeah, pigeons.
Carrier pigeons have been a thing.
Yeah, well, First World War.
Guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs can't go that quickly. They wouldn't be very good over water or land.
True. Dolphin. Turtles. Turtles are amphibious.
Krakens.
Oh, there you go. Attach it right to Yara.
Yeah. That'll go over
Put it on her
in
leg.
no time whatsoever.
Yara's protected by plot armor, it seems. So
Yara isn't even in the show anymore.
yeah, that's true. 5 of the kingdoms did get wiped out.
Well, no, because apparently, remember, don't forget, we have the new Prince of Dawn. On the note
true.
of the other kingdoms, where the fuck is Edmure Tully?
We don't know. Remember, we hypothesized that he was still prisoner of Walder Frey.
Arya forgot to let him out. She just isn't that keen on her uncle, is she?
No. She's the only one who has the authority now, her being pseudo-Walder.
Should we just do a roll call for a minute? So we have the Starks still in charge of the North. I'm presuming that Robert Arryn is still existing.
Probably.
Well, Robin Arryn. as he's known in the
They've
show.
conflated the entire Vale into Sansa.
Yeah.
Like,
She's the only real heir to the Vale now.
she transformed it into like a fucking infinity stone or something and just absorbed it into her body.
So we've technically got an heir to the Vale. Riverlands, who knows? Stormlands, Gendry, but surely
Yes.
I feel like there's other more viable claimants to the throne of Stone's End.
But in the show, much like Sansa has absorbed the Vale, Gendry has
Is now
also
all the
absorbed-
Stormlands.
Yes, he represents the Stormlands.
Just forgetting the thing that Brienne of Tarth is also
True.
from the Stormlands.
True.
That sort of thing.
Just ignoring that. It's Gendry. It's like
Highgarden? Who knows? The Tyrells have been killed.
they were torched and bankrupted, weren't
Yep,
they? More or less.
the Reach has been torched, bankrupted, and 2 biggest houses there have been wiped out. So the Tarleys and the Tyrells.
They do have a new lord, though, Bronn of the Blackwater.
I don't know if Tyrion's actually going to give it to him, honestly.
He might not have the authority by the end of this episode. But, Bronn, the way he's moving upward, he's basically going to be king by the end of episode 6 anyways.
Honestly, going by the way that this episode has gone, there's not going to be a throne.
Probably not.
Which will be the only decision that I will agree with the show with at this point.
To just burn it down.
Yeah, just burn the whole fucking thing to the ground. Burn all of the box sets. It's shit.
Then we have the Prince of Dorne.
Who we're assuming is an Ironwood.
Yes, we don't know what or who he is. He could be a White Walker for all we know.
Who fucking knows? Who fucking knows at this point?
It's a placeholder. It's a prince. We know that it's man because he's a prince.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah. That's... Who knows? And then we have Castle Rock with the Westlands and King's Landing with the Lannisters, but that's it. Iron Islands are split between 2 places.
So Varys.
Oh, yeah, sorry, going back to the point. So basically, Varys has written all these letters and Tyrion snitches on him.
Yeah.
To Dany.
Snitches get stitches.
And Dany's just like, oh, well, I suppose Jacaerys then. Fuck it.
Her logic traces the betrayal back to Jon, though, correctly. Although technically, I don't know if Jon betrayed her because he never promised.
No,
that
he never
wouldn't
promised
say.
her. He said, these are my family. I'm going to tell my family, fuck you.
Yes. But she's insane now, so that's how she reads the situation.
It's been such a beautiful character progression, honestly.
It's like a slow descent and then just right off a cliff.
Yeah. So Varys is basically, after his betrayal has been found out, he is sentenced to execution by Dragonfire.
Yes.
With Jon looking on.
I did like the cinematography there of the dragon appearing behind her. It was very frightening to see that very large dragon.
Yeah.
And she gave the order with a sort of ho-hum Dracarys.
Yeah. She doesn't care anymore. She's gone.
Every Dracarys before that was pretty forceful and vehement. She was like, Dracarys. And this one's like, Dracarys.
Fuck it. Fuck it. Guess I gotta get rid of the traitor.
So Varys gets burned alive.
And honestly, Varys I thought was one of the ones who would actually survive.
Really?
Yeah. I thought he was more of a cockroach than a spider.
Mm.
You know, surviving the nuclear fallout that is dragons.
But to do that, he would have to not be betrayed, I guess, by Tyrion.
Well, Varys as the betrayer of Daenerys didn't really make sense anyway.
Well, it makes sense if you believe the whole poisoning thing. The fact that he's trying to kill her would definitely be cause for execution, I think. Not to mention the whole treason part, but yeah.
But I feel like the whole motivation isn't really there. Like, of the 2 main counselors that she has, surely Varys, the one who's been working for an ascension of a pure-blooded Targaryen to the throne, who has been Team Dany since day 1 apparently, surely he would be the more likely candidate to stay by Daenerys, whilst Tyrion is the one to be more pragmatic.
No, that could make sense. I mean, Varys is the one who is for protecting the realm, though, I suppose. And obviously, if he thought Dany would spare the citizenry, he would have held off and waited to see how it played out. maybe she spares everybody. Maybe he can kill her at a later date.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have to kill her right away. But I think the urgency of the moment, the fact that she was, he could see the writing on the wall. He had the script. He knew what D&D were going to do. So he basically just said, oh, gotta stop this. Gotta kill her.
Yeah.
And then he died as a result. But yeah, so Varys is gone, and that's another one of her advisors that she cannot trust. But betraying Varys must have been pretty hard for Tyrion just because they were friends. They had all those great scenes. Yeah, they were definitely besties. And so to watch him get burned alive definitely had to put some doubt into his mind.
Yeah.
And then the next thing he learns, like the big revelation, is that Jaime was caught trying to cross the border. And Tyrion decides that he needs to free him, obviously, because he's his brother and he's the only person who's ever like really, really loved him.
Yeah.
And so he frees him and sends him off.
Being smuggled in by Davos.
Yes. As that's what Davos does. He smuggles. Apparently he does not sail, though, because he wasn't on any of the ships the last time. But I did like that scene between him and Jaime.
I liked it in isolation.
Yeah.
But in the grand context of the show, where Jaime said, I don't care about the small folk, I never cared about them. That is the whole reason why he became the Kingslayer in the first place, is because he cared about all of those innocent lives.
Exactly. Because his whole arc is, this is what the big thing online is that everybody is pretty angry that his entire redemption arc of him sort of doing what's right at great personal cost has sort of been just turned upside down and on its head so that he can come back to Cersei.
I want to fuck my sister.
Yeah.
And the way that the relationship is portrayed in the show, in the books, I feel like it's quite clear that the way that Cersei treats Jaime is an instance of female on male abuse. It's not romantic. It's not something that should be portrayed as being admirable or tragic or anything like that. It's fucking abusive. It's toxic and it's abusive. Whereas the show, every opportunity that it gets, it is trying its damned hardest to portray it as being almost admirable. That kind of devotion.
They did give them a very, sort of sweet, in quotes, I guess, ending to their lives. It's a bit strange. Imagine they had a story about a drug addict, and for 7 seasons it was about him trying to kick this habit, trying to beat this habit, and then in season 8 in the finale it ends with him holding his bag of heroin. That's how he dies.
And just having the grandest time of his life.
Yeah, and the sad music is playing. He's crying, weeping tears of joy as he holds this bag of heroin.
Oh, my heroin. I love it.
I spent all this time trying to, get away from you, but in the end, we were meant to be together. It's just us.
And you're carrying my baby.
Yes. That's what it seemed like. It was really weird. It was really weird because most of the time in these kind of shows, we're meant to root for the guy to beat his addiction, to beat this toxic relationship, this evil that is sort of held him,
and consuming.
Captive.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the end, it's oh, well, that's an interesting way to go about it.
It's just, if they'd have portrayed it as being, ultimately as being this is toxic, this is awful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded the way that he goes out as much as I do. But at the end of the day, it was presented as being two romantic figures going down together. Yeah.
You know what would have been good? If he went back to her and she spurned him, more or less.
Yeah. She was oh, you're responsible for all this. You were the one who were helping the dragon bitch and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then, he realizes that he made a mistake and that's how he dies. It would have been sort of miserable and full of despair, like much of the episode, but at least it would have made sense. But once they play the fucking dramatic, romantic music and it's supposed to...
The romantic rendition of the Reigns of Castamere, which is something that I never thought I'd say.
Yeah. Once they play that music that's supposed to cue you into the emotion you're supposed to feel, then you know, more or less what the intent is. And it's no, that's wrong. It's don't have the guy hug the bag of heroin in the end. It's just... it's not how this is supposed to work.
Show it as being the bag of heroin that causes his downfall.
Yes. Surely that is the standard practice. But maybe it's gotten to the point where they're just subverting expectations just to subvert them. And it's just like, you know what would be a really big twist is if we had the bag of heroin and the addict fall in love in the end. Shocking twist. And they didn't have to do Brienne like that either. It's
no.
Yeah.
Are we even going to see the characters in Winterfell again?
We're going to see them at the montage at the end where everybody's like
happy,
living in peace. Yeah. Happily ever after montage.
But yeah, I didn't see them in the preview for the... Yeah.
Yeah. We'll definitely have a montage of Westeros, like all the kingdoms or something. Maybe we'll even see the Prince of Dorne, the imaginary Prince of Dorne. It'll just be a cardboard cutout of somebody. It'll just be a coffee cup, maybe.
It's just going to be Duran again. Yeah. A cardboard cutout of Duran.
Yeah, pretty much. They'll use the same actor. They'll just give him a different beard or something.
Yeah. Right, so we've done Jaime. We've done Tyrion. Tyrion also wanders through the ruins later on and has some very upset shots.
Yeah, should we talk about, I guess, the battle and the characters in?
Before we do get to the battle, though, here's my nitpick of the episode.
Just one?
Yes. So Jon reports that his armies have just crossed the Trident, and they should be by King's Landing in 2 days. The Trident is described as being several hundred miles from King's Landing. And so we were doing a bit of maths today, and James was better at maths than me. He basically figured it out, that they would have to be running at marathon pace, as in like world record breaking marathon pace, with their armour, with their swords, non-stop, no breaks, no sleep, no food, nothing, to get it down from the Trident to King's Landing in 2 days.
How do you know they weren't?
Because... as somebody who considers themselves as being of reasonable fitness, I won't be able to fucking do it.
I wish they showed that
in
scene.
Full armour.
That would have been hilarious.
I can't imagine that the Northmen are that fit at cross country. Honestly.
Maybe some of the Vale runners, because, altitude, they're like Kenyans.
Yeah.
It still would have been a fun scene to film, though. That would have redeemed the entire episode if they just spent like 10 minutes just showing
cross country. Just showing a cross country race. But yeah, so that was my nitpick of the episode. There is no way that you can get an army from the Trident to King's Landing in 2 days.
Are you sure they didn't steal Euron's teleportation technology at some
Probably did.
That's
so okay, we've got teleportation technology now. We stole Littlefinger's backpack. So that was my nitpick of the episode, and that was something that Jon brought up. So that brings us to Jon and Davos.
Yes.
Which, honestly, they didn't do that much in that episode. All we really saw was Jon being conflicted, which has been his entire season arc.
Yeah. It was kind of funny how they all stood outside of the castle, and they were just told to basically wait there until Dany just came and just rendered fire and blood all over the place.
And destroyed the Golden Company, who have been hyped up for the entirety of the season and then got blown up.
The Golden Company, who also decided to stand outside the castle walls.
Again, tactical errors, mate. Tactical errors.
I like how they just both stood there outside the castle walls. What if, nothing happened? They just, stand there for, an hour or something.
It's like, could something just happen? Could somebody just come and attack us? Because, we're getting paid by the hour for this. And we're going to up our rates if nothing happens. Just saying.
We did get that scene before that, speaking of Jon, where he once again cannot return Dany's affections. And that sort of I guess, furthers her descent.
Because he doesn't want to shag his aunt.
Yeah. I mean, is that the reasoning that we're going with? Because it hasn't really been explained. He just kind of makes out with her for a little bit and then just, sighs and says, no, we can't do this.
He's like, I want to shag you, but you're my aunt, and I keep on forgetting this and remembering this.
Yeah. It's like, my pants are halfway down to my ankles, but yeah, it's like, nope, we can't do this.
Also, you probably want to kill my sisters / cousins.
Do you think if he just... I don't know if we want to get into Dany yet, but...
Yeah, well, there's a lot of crossover, isn't there?
Do we think if he just returns some of her affection, it'll help with some of her loneliness? I don't know.
Ultimately, no.
Yeah, probably.
I don't think it eases her up in any way in relation to the battle. Because when she's trying to come on to Jon, she is grasping at straws.
Yeah. The moment he told Sansa more or less sealed the deal in terms of just her not being able to trust him ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she is desperately clambering to try and get some sort of human connection, but it's failing miserably.
Funny thing about Jon, more or less, to me, is that he's the one who's going to be the hero in the end, most likely. He is the protagonist, the secret protagonist throughout this entire show.
Yeah.
And in the books. And thought to be the hero, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, and yet he's so fucking like helpless in every episode.
He's not a leader.
He's so useless. He just stands there and basically watches all his terrible decisions play out. And it's kind of strange that this is the person that we're supposed to be rooting for in the end when he's not doing anything that is particularly heroic. This has been going on for a while, so that's the only part that gives me pause in terms of Jon sitting on the Iron Throne, is that it's almost by default. It's almost because everyone else is so bad, and here's this guy who isn't bad, but he's also kind of useless and helpless, and he doesn't even want it. So it's a strange sort of dichotomy there.
I will say, though, that once the battle actually started, the one thing that this episode did do well was portraying the whole war is hell concept.
Yeah.
And when they were all just slaughtering innocent villagers, and when the Unsullied turned on the surrendering, there was no honour in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was well done, honestly.
Yeah.
It was nihilistic, and I didn't particularly care for the fact that all of these innocent citizens were dying or anything like that. But I thought that it portrayed very well, because this is the first time that Jon's been part of a war that's been part of a foreign soil.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time that he's seen the Northerners against the Lannisters. For example, the Lannisters who've destroyed his land, his family. He hasn't seen any of the horrors of the War of the Five Kings. He's been up on the wall for all this time. So I think it portrayed the disillusionment very well.
Yeah, the whole scene, just like from the perspective of the ground, the villagers, the common folks, the small folk, did a very good job of portraying the horrors of war. And for Jon's own soldier, I mean, it's different if it's a Lannister person, because the Lannisters are evil in his mind. They're the enemy, right? But when it's someone from your own side who's committing this atrocity, and it sort of speaks to just how terrible war is.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice, and the look with Davos and him trying to pull his soldiers back constantly. Like, no, this is over, we're done. That was good.
Yeah, especially because Davos, those are his people, right?
Yeah, and that was the most powerful part of the episode. And there was a lot of awful shit that happened in the episode, but honestly, going down to, war isn't quite honourable like we thought it was. It's not quite the same as fighting human beings as it is fighting the dead. And so I thought that was a nice moment.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that it all trickles down from the top, right?
Yeah.
You first saw the people drop their swords once the bells were rung, the Alice bells were rung. You saw this moment of peace and surrender, and that it would, for a moment, Jon might have thought this would have ended quietly. And then the thing that triggered it was the actions of Dany. So it's her leadership that is creating this kind of madness in his own men. It's her sort of actions that triggered this chaos. She was the one that lit the powder keg. So
literally.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, she was the one who had the meltdown, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And let's see how many fire puns we could burn.
On that note, should we go into Daenerys?
Yes. Should we talk about how her slow burn turned into a... I'm trying to think of what the...
I'll let you edit it in post.
Turned into a wildfire.
Oh, you're so funny. There you go. Now you've got a stock sound, so you can mash it all together to sound like you've made a hilarious joke.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about it briefly before this, but Dany's sort of heel turn, the mother of all heel turns. I mean, it's very controversial. Let's say that. So what are your thoughts on Dany finally turning heel and setting King's Landing ablaze?
I feel like it needed a lot more build-up in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the books, because everything is taking its time. You can see it edging towards that. And the thing is, with this breakdown that she's had, people are going to say, oh, it's so clever, because like towards the end of the episode, we get the ashes falling like snow, and they're gonna be like, oh, but it was echoed towards all the way in season 2, and it's like, yeah, but that's not the showrunner's foreshadowing. And I think the way that Daenerys is going to come to the Iron Throne in the books is going to be completely different. And it's going to have had a lot more impact, because the way I see it going down is there are caches of wildfire all around King's Landing. And to the show's credit, they didn't ignore that, because we did see the explosions of wildfire.
We did.
But the way that I see it going down is Daenerys thinks, right, best way to do this, best way to take down Cersei is going to be to fucking set the Red Keep ablaze.
Mm-hmm.
Red Keep is attached to loads of fucking wildfire. It's going to set off all the wildfire around the city, blow up all the small folk, and I think the sheer tremendous amount of loss of life, if she does go Mad Queen, it's not going to be because, oh, she's lost 1 or 2 very important advisors. It's because she's going to be the root cause of this mass amount of death. And I feel like that would be a far more reasonable explanation as to her descent. Whereas the show, it's kind of tried to, like, funnel it down into just a couple of episodes with the loss of half her Dothraki and half her Unsullied and things like that.
I do think it has to be something evil, though. If she takes down the Red Keep, which is the perfectly logical thing to do, which is a perfectly sensible thing to do, and it burns down the rest of King's Landing by accident, I don't know if Jon turns on her, because that's the plot point that needs to be served, right?
But it's the actions afterwards that I feel it would be.
Yeah, it would require another episode, more or less.
Yeah, which they refused.
Yeah, part of the problem may be, I was thinking about this, is because we don't have the other kingdoms involved. I mean, we talked about this early in the episode, but because it's been reduced to this handful of characters, this show that used to kind of jet back from here to fucking Essos and back and all across the 7 kingdoms, the pacing was more deliberate because of that. I wonder if because we only have a handful of characters that everything is sort of like jam-packed, they don't have any other way to fill the time or something. I don't know.
No.
I kind of think that they could have put in other scenes to slow the pacing. Maybe just have a scene where Arya and the Hound are mid-trip and sort of reminding us viewers like why they're going down to King's Landing, because that's also feels like it happened centuries ago. This whole Hound, Clegane Bowl, and Arya wanting to kill Cersei stuff.
Oh god, yeah, shit. Oh.
Just something to remind us, you know, and something to set like the pacing a little bit slower, and maybe like with 10 episodes, it might have not felt as rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was like this rushed feeling about it, even though it's been obvious for a while and quite predictable that this is how it would go down. But maybe to your point, I was thinking like something should have triggered her response other than just seeing the Red Keep.
Yeah, like the bells ringing, but then say some of the Lannister soldiers take some of the small folk hostage, for example, and she sees that and it's like, oh shit, you know?
Yeah, because her whole thing has been about punishing people that challenged her authority, not surrendered to it, right? Well, like the Tarleys, they did not want to bend the knee, right? And so she burned them. The Masters kind of defied her, and so she crucified them. Like, let's say if the bells rung and then everyone surrendered, and at that point she was ready to just like sit back and let her Unsullied storm the Red Keep, and then a scorpion bolt comes out, and maybe that's when Rhaegal dies. Maybe Rhaegal survived last episode, and maybe he dies this time, and then that teaches her once and for all that mercy cannot be given. These people need to be wiped out, and then that triggers the genocide. That tracks more, I think, for me than her killing innocents who have surrendered, who do recognize her as queen.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Yeah, it also make more sense to me if she had decided this earlier on. I could buy that as well if this was something that she decided, I need to commit this genocide to make the people fear me, make the people bow to me, and this was something that she decided after her mercy failed her earlier. But that's not what this was, apparently. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. That's what they said in the Inside the Episode.
Inside the episode.
Yeah. So there's a lot of parts of it that I don't know if they track. Also, can we talk about the scorpions? What's up with the fucking scorpions?
How did they need to establish some just, like, consistency?
Yes.
Because they're either super accurate or they're not. And I feel like the show tried to combat that by having Daenerys fly in the sunlight. because she saw Euron shielding his eyes a little bit. It's like, oh, so she's flying in from the sun, which impedes their vision, which makes it easier for her to blow them up.
Mm-hmm.
But there were like 50 fucking scorpions that we saw get blown up. You're telling me that not one of them hit their target, when last episode we had 3 hit their targets out of nowhere.
I don't think they even made any attempt to hit her. That's the thing. Like,
no.
We had a torrent of bolts in the last episode, and it was like really, really tense as to whether she would evade them or not, right? Here there was no tension. It was just maybe somebody like shot a bolt by accident because he stepped on the trigger or something like that. I don't.
Yeah.
The bolts were eaten up. They were plot termites or something. I don't know. Maybe they just ran out of wood to make more bolts. The fucking scorpions on the castle ramparts too. They just stood there. None of them even swiveled toward the dragon to even attempt the fire.
Just like, oh, there's a dragon now. Oh,
what do I do?
We're not going to do nothing. I mean, I've got this big thing that's been proven that it can take down dragons, but nah.
Also, why not put some in the Red Keep? Just in case the dragon gets past the first.
A couple of spares.
Yeah. Might be good to just put one in the one place that you're gonna stand and watch the battle unfold. It might be good. Might be a good idea.
Yeah. In fact, I saw that I wrote in my notes, all the scorpions are gone. What the fuck?
Plot bubblegum was stuck in their gears. They couldn't swivel them.
Yeah.
They couldn't do anything.
They just had to stand there to be targets. Euron managed to survive getting hit by dragon flame without a scratch.
Yes.
Enough to fight and stab Jaime.
It was very strange, the skill he had with the crossbow, just how confident he was. And then in this episode,
he's just like, oh, I've forgotten how to use the crossbow. All I want to do is look stylish in my leather trousers.
It's very strange. All season he's been OP, and then all of a sudden a little sun in his eyes and he's trash. But yes, he does suddenly show up on shore, just in time to fight Jaime to the death.
And honestly, I don't know what went off in that scene, other than, oh, I shagged your sister.
It's very strange.
You can be another Kingslayer again, even though he's not crowned king. But, whatever floats your boat, Euron.
It would have been nice if Euron just got burned alive, but instead they wanted to give this fight scene, I guess, to Jaime and Euron.
They wanted to give him this fantastic death scene.
Yes, that's true.
For this really fantastic character.
Him and Bronn, they're obviously the favorites, being the ones who get all the dick jokes.
Well, I'm glad that we've got no more Euron now.
Yes, that's true. I feel like it definitely should have been more painful to reflect the pain inflicted on the viewers, but at least Euron's dead.
Euron? More like, you're in. Get him? Because he's a piss-weak character.
That is true.
Yeah, so basically, this is the thing about the episode, is that the episode spent a good 50 minutes of runtime focusing on Daenerys just inflicting pain on people.
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever heard of the concept of Acadia?
No.
So I first heard about it from this really wonderful article on Game of Thrones and Acadia. It was written a couple of seasons ago. I'll link it to you and it can be put in the description for anyone who's interested. But basically, Acadia is listlessness, torpor, not caring about anything.
Oh, sounds like me.
Yeah.
Sounds like my lifestyle.
It also pretty much describes the way that this season especially has made me feel. Like, it's just highlighting so much death and destruction, and it punishes you for caring about characters.
Yeah. This episode
but you just
in particular.
Can't be arsed to care,
There was so much despair throughout the episode that it kind of just, it was a downer. It was a buzzkill.
And don't get me wrong, highlighting the awfulness of war, something that I'm down with. But to spend 50 minutes of a show when you've only got 6 episodes of it left, 1 episode of it now, it seems like you're just reveling in ways to waste the CGI budget. Like, you can show hundreds and hundreds of buildings being destroyed, hundreds of people dying, but you can't show Jon petting his fucking dog.
Yeah. No, they couldn't. It would have been too emotional in a positive sense. They didn't want any of that. They just wanted full on despair. It was interesting they didn't show Dany's reaction as she was just kind of strafing her fire all over the place.
Yeah.
They stuck with the people.
Once we had the initial, I'm deciding to destroy things, there was nothing.
Yeah, it was weird because they completely dehumanized her at that point, deliberately, not showing
She was
anything.
just a flying nuclear bomb.
Yeah, pretty much. I get the point of it. They wanted to show it from that side, and they didn't want to make her likable at all in any way, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It would have been interesting just to see what her reaction was or what her facial expression was during that time, because she was just killing everybody. I think Drogon was tired of her saying Dracarys at some point.
Fire's hard, Mom. Yeah. Stop it.
You think this comes out of nowhere? I mean, I'm gonna have to eat at least 50 goats to replenish this fuel.
He just wants to go home, have a nap, have a nice glass of milk.
It's enough already.
Have his mum look after him.
Enough with the Dracarys.
He's lost 2 of his brothers. He needs time to grieve as well.
And not to mention, she's probably tired too. Her fucking Dracaryses are more the same one for Varys. She's probably at that point, she's just Dracarys. Dracarys. Oh, there's some orphans over there. Dracarys. Oh, look at those little kids over there. Dracarys.
Just keep on assuming that I'm saying Dracarys and just blow everything to smithereens. It's fine.
It's like Hodor. It just becomes Dukas at some point.
Yeah. Who knew?
It kind of reminds me a little bit of Anakin Skywalker killing the younglings. It's just at some point, they just needed something to make
him look bad.
Yeah, him look so bad that the people closest to him, the people that cared so much about him, would turn on him. And basically, these were the younglings for Dany, is to kill all these people, and it's just that's what made Jon turn. It does kind of make me sort of wonder what the hell Bran was thinking starting these chain of events in the first place. Maybe Bran is the Night King. He probably
saw... Maybe he is. Maybe he's already been possessed.
It was his backup plan in case all this shit failed. It's I still have Jon. I may be dead, but I still have Jon. I still have the fire. I'll just tell Jon who he really is, and he'll tell Dany, and
it'll go okay, and it'll be fine. No.
He'll tell Dany. Dany will freak out, and Dany will lay waste to everything. The Night King's plan is done. Because, does Bran see the future, or does he not?
I think he's like Doctor Strange.
Yeah, so if he's like Doctor Strange, he had to know this would happen, right?
Yeah, and he just didn't care because he's not human anymore. I don't know if you've noticed this, Chris, but Bran is an emotionless robot now. Oh,
that's true. He doesn't care about the people in King's Landing. He's like new Jaime. He's not like old Jaime. He's a new person. He just doesn't care
about the people.
They're just a number to him. They're not ravens. If there were ravens in King's Landing, he would have never told Jon.
He'd be like, no, protect my boys.
What do you think happens if Jon never tells Dany?
Jon continues fucking his aunt conflictedly for the rest of his life. They get married, and everything's nice and peaceful.
Yeah. So this is all Bran's fault. We're in agreement.
Yeah. Although I am waiting to see somebody try and contort the explanation to make the waste of King's Landing and blame it on Sansa.
Yeah.
Because I know that on some corner of the A Song of Ice and Fire forums, the argument has been made.
I blame Bran.
Yeah, I blame Bran as well.
Maybe Bran figures, that the loss of life in King's Landing is outweighed by the future people saved by Jon, as he would be a better ruler than Dany. Yeah. So that he's like, okay, this is the sacrifice so that Jon is on the throne, and more importantly, Jon's children are on the throne, who have his sensibilities, nurture over nature, right?
Yeah.
And not Dany's sensibilities. And so I guess the sacrifice is necessary from that point, but yeah, still, this is on him. I don't know. What do you think about Arya's path in this episode?
In some ways, I didn't mind it, but in other ways, they said that they wanted to put a human face on the suffering of the people of King's Landing and the inside the episode.
Because we wouldn't have cared if it was a nobody.
But it's you've got Davos there. Davos has more connections to King's Landing.
True.
He has been established as being a member of the small folk who cares about people's suffering.
But does the average fan care about Davos the way they care about Arya?
Well, I mean, at this point, I care more about Davos than I do about Arya, but obviously I'm not an average fan. I am not the show's target audience anymore, Kris.
Yeah, I mean, Davos makes more sense thematically, I think.
Yeah.
Arya, I would argue, does make sense.
For fan service.
Yeah, for fan service. Plus, an emotional attachment perspective. We have more of an emotional attachment to Arya than we do Davos because she's a Stark. We've been rooting for the Starks. But yeah, I mean, they could have also used Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was in this. So Green Bay Packer fans would have been attached to him. Yeah, that's a football joke.
Yeah. It's okay, that's why I gave you a sympathetic laugh, kind of be like, that's football or something. But yeah, it was... I don't think it made sense for Arya to be down there, but I can understand why they decided to have Arya down there. What I can't forgive is the amount of fucking plot armor that they had on her. Again.
That wasn't ash you were looking at. That was more plot armor. It was plot ash.
It was plot ash.
They built the Red Keep out of sandstone and plot ash, and so that if anyone ever destroyed it, the ash would just boom. It would just
cover all the important characters.
Yes. And then there was a horse at the end, which was...
One surviving white horse. Because of course there fucking was.
Did you see online that the people were attributing it to a Bible quote?
No.
Supposedly it has to do with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and the exact quote is, "I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him." So biblical.
I don't give them that much credit, Kris.
Well, but that's the thing. If they did that, like, what does the Bible, what does Christianity have to do with the Game of Thrones universe? I mean, did someone leave a Bible on the table along with the coffee cup? I mean, it's
well, the Faith of the Seven is supposedly based off of, Christianity more than anything.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that I enjoyed about Arya and the Hound's plotline.
Mm-hmm.
1, made Arya vulnerable.
Yes.
2, they featured a northern soldier who was representing proper northern dialects by saying, "Hey up, what do you think you're doing? I say hey up, I feel represented." And I appreciated that they allowed the Hound and Arya a proper character moment where the Hound was like, "Don't be like me." Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
cool.
I like that. I think they could have set it up better, though, again, with a scene prior to that, with them at camp or something, where they were leaning toward what they were going to end up doing. Is just they were leaning toward the revenge part, where she was giving her sort of explanation of why she still wants to kill Cersei, because it's been a while. There's been some distance, both in terms of time and emotion. It's kind of like you hate somebody from high school or something, and then you're now like in your fucking mid-30s, and you're talking to somebody about still wanting to like kill that person from high school. It's like, wait, you still hate that person? Yeah. You just fought an army of the dead. You just fucking killed the Night King. There's been some distance. You, the Hound, you have fought the army of the dead too. There's been some distance between you and this. I know it's a blood feud. It's like, your brother you've hated for a long time. But, I mean, there's got to be some kind of distance from that emotion of wanting revenge, of that emotion of hate. So to kind of revisit that and explain how that hasn't changed or why they still feel that way would kind of been a nice refresher, I think, for me. Because I felt like I forgot why they hated each other. It's been a while.
You know when it was last explained?
When?
All the way back in season 1.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's been seeded that the Hound hates fire.
Right.
But the last time that it was explicitly acknowledged that the Hound hates the mountain because the Hound shoved his face into some hot coals.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was back in season 1.
Yeah, it's been a while. And on top of that, his brother, the Mountain, we don't even know if he's even human anymore anyway.
No.
So it's kind of hard to gauge how meaningful killing him is if he's already dead, if he's already a zombie. I will say that the battle was pretty awesome.
Really?
Yeah, I like that when he was like jabbing him with a knife and he wouldn't die. Like I thought Qyburn dying was hilarious too.
Yeah, Qyburn's death was hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't like the location. I didn't like the location on the stairwell fighting. It felt a little bit weird and cramped. But the whole part with like the actual fight choreography, I liked.
I feel like it would have been nicer to have ended the fight with the Hound explicitly overcoming his fear of fire.
Okay.
To rid himself of Gregor, because you're fighting in a city full of dragon fucking fire. And we've established that the undead hate fire. Even if Gregor's a different breed of undead, I feel like the Hound should have made that connection.
How about this? He's getting choked and there is a sword or dagger next to him that's in flames or something, or in fire.
Yeah.
And he just reaches in and grabs it and kills him that way or something
Yeah.
like that.
Perfect. Or a stake or something, you know? Just some fallen fucking wood.
Yeah, because the way it happened, it was more of an accident that he fell in the fire.
Yeah.
There was no sort of personal, like, drive to it. There was no, like, overcoming of a fear. But I guess, did he overcome that fear at the Battle of Winterfell? I forget.
Sort of, not really.
And he certainly didn't overcome it in the face of his brother. You know,
No.
maybe another way they could have done is, like, his brother's, like, putting his face to, like, some kind of burning fire again or something.
And he
right?
shoves the brazier in his face.
Yeah, exactly. There's just ways to do it that gives him agency
Yeah.
in how he overcomes that fear. It gives him agency in how he dies, as opposed to what seemingly was just an accident. He pushed him over, but he had no idea that they were going to burn alive.
Yeah, he had no idea that wall was going to fall down.
Yeah, exactly. So you have convinced me, Alice. That fight sucked.
Clegane Bowl. Pew, 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 pew.
Clegane Bowl. We were looking so forward to it. And the other problem is it's been hyped up for 8 seasons, and it hasn't really been talked about or been a central plot point for a while. And it's just, oh yeah, this was something we were all looking forward to. And then now it's happening at a point where it's like a side quest. Imagine like you're about to go on the quest to kill Alduin, and then like a fucking Thieves Guild quest pops up right in the middle of Sovngarde or something.
Yeah.
And it's like this was sort of important, but it's not the main thing, so why is it here now?
Yeah.
It's a little bit weird in that sense.
So yeah, it was very anticlimactic to say that it was something that people have been waiting for ages. And yeah, that pretty much comes to the end of my notes, honestly.
So, what are your thoughts for the last episode? We have one more episode, just one more lap around the track. You sound exhausted. You sound tired and struggling to get through this.
It was just this episode. Like last episode, I was raging, and it was fun because I was being fueled by it. And the episode before, I enjoyed the spectacle, but taking a step back, I found stuff to talk about. This, it feels like nothing fucking happened. Even though this was arguably, supposedly one of the most important parts of the series, it just feels like nothing happened.
I mean, King's Landing got burned down, but the problem with that was it was predictable.
It was both predictable and nonsensical at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't track in some ways, and overall, it just feels like one of the main problems with this show is how long George took to write the books. And I don't mean that as a knock on him, but just in terms of what that means for the viewer and the reader. The whole Aegon thing, the spoiler about Jon, that was spoiled like years ago.
Yeah.
Like every major thing has been predicted for years, just because the amount of time
that we've had to go over and go over and go over.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, because of how slow it's been, because it's been, again, a slow burn, there's nothing about this show that's really surprising at this point.
No. And when they try to be surprising, it comes out of nowhere.
Exactly. It's not earned. And that's the thing. It's when they do surprise, it's just a twist for the sake of a twist. And when they don't, and all the major things that are supposed to be earned surprises, we already know about, right?
Yeah.
Precisely because of how long it's taken to get from A to B. We knew about the Mad Queen. We knew about Jon's history. We kind of pretty much know how this is going to end. But I'm still going to ask the question. How is it going to end?
Well, in my dream, after this episode, Bran wakes up from his coma. He turns and he sees Jon crouching over him, just about to say his final goodbyes as he goes off to the wall. Catelyn turns round and looks at him and says, "Oh my God, Bran, you're awake." And Bran turns to his mother and says, "I had the most terrifying dream. You were there, and you were there, and you were there. And then you died. But then you were there again. And it was the most awful dream. And it went by dream logic as well, where everything happens and you don't really question it whilst you're in the dream. But once you wake up, you realise how little sense it makes. I mean, there was this whole plot line in Dawn, which is supposed to be a really feminist area, but they had women talking about killing little girls and things like that. And the Great Sept of Baelor blew up along with half the noble families, and you wouldn't believe it, but the families didn't revolt about any of that. And Sansa decides to marry a Bolton, and like, they've not betrayed us yet, but we know the Boltons. We don't like the Boltons. And then she gets brutally raped, Mother. Can you imagine? I'm so glad that this isn't happening, Mother. Let's call Dad back from King's Landing, because that Joffrey is a bit of a shit. And we'll call Dad back. He can marry Marjorie Tyrell, and we'll all live happily ever after. By the way, there's zombies coming from beyond the wall, so let's sort that out, okay?
That was amazing. Although technically it was the other dream where Catelyn came back. This one she kind of stayed dead, and it was very sad.
Yeah. And that's really where the series takes a bit of a turn, honestly.
Yes. There's still hope for the other dream.
Yeah. A dream of spring.
Yes. The dream I just had sucked.
Yeah.
I'm going to take another nap. We're going to see where it goes. Hopefully, you're going to survive.
I'll see you in 20 years, Mother. So that's how I see it ending. How do you see it ending?
No, that was perfect. I will not debate that. Let's just send that script to the writers now. Maybe they'll film it and change the ending.
Film it in post. Also, Ghost is there and John Pett's Ghost.
Yes. That would be a great way to like fade out. You just fade out, you see Ghost and John.
Just being a good boy.
Yeah. But you're a good boy, Ghost. The end.
Yeah.
And it'll be easy to tack onto the end of the episode. You can keep the episode as it is now. You would just put that right after the credits.
Yeah. No, that's what I want to see. It's not going to happen, but that's all I can imagine as even attempting to redeem this series, because it's been shit.
So no predictions for who sits on the Iron Throne? Are we going with Jon or
the Iron Throne
Sansa?
dies? Everything dies.
Are we having a democracy now? Is that what's going on?
We're having 7 independently ruled kingdoms. Edmure Tully gets released from the dungeons in the Twins.
All ruled by Bronn.
Yeah, most of the kingdoms are ruled by Bronn. It's fine.
All right, so there we go. Nobody sits on the Iron Throne. I'm going to still say Jon. That's where I think this series is going. It's been headed for a while. It might not feel satisfying because of how much of a dunce he's been for these past 8 years, but I don't know. We're going to see Jon. We're going to get the montage. I guess he's going to have to kill Dany.
Yeah.
It's going to be very heart-wrenching, I want to say. I don't know. It's hard to say that now because they've already had their breakup talk, right?
I don't want to fuck my aunt. Well, we'll go with fear then.
I mean, he still loves her, I guess, so it might be emotional. I am going to miss watching these characters every Sunday, though. It's going to be sad in that sense.
We're going to have to find a new show for me to passionately hate. Maybe we'll have to start doing book reviews.
Yes. We'll have our own book club.
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
I wonder if our listeners would approve, though, because they are very precious to us.
We have a passionate but perfectly formed fan base.
Yes.
And we love you very much.
The point is that we should do what we find fun. We
Yeah.
should watch things we find fun and talk about things that we find fun, because we're obviously not doing it for the money, so
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. But one last episode.
And then we're done.
It's gonna. You sound very tired, but I'm still holding out hope for some very, very emotional scenes. We're both gonna cry.
I'm going to cry with relief.
Some tears of joy, some tears of relief, some tears of sadness.
And it's all over now. Things can only get better. With one episode to go.
All right, tune in next week.
Good night.